We know you're not going to retire for at least 20 years, so we know Mike might not be here. Yeah, he's already over. I'm ready to go. I hope I can last.
We should turn the music down. We're about ready to get started.
I'm ready to retire.
Is our online feed all ready? Online feeds all ready?
We good? Are you ready?
No,
Okay.
but I'm here.
This is what we do.
You ready, Derek? Okay, I'm going to introduce you all to the proprietor, community activist, Derek Chase, who will lead today's press conference.
I'm just going to pull down my mask so that we can be clear. Good morning, first and foremost, to all who are here via live as well as through our live feed. It's my esteemed pleasure, especially on a day like today, Dr. King's birthday, to have an opportunity to speak about the gravity of this moment. I want to thank all of our press for being here. America is to be free. The most critical voice that we must acknowledge is the voice of a free press. It is so critical to a democracy that without it, the democracy begins to erode. Today, we are here because we stand shoulder to shoulder in support of all of the freedom fighters that have emerged in this quest for the American dream. They emerged from the shores from the very beginning, fighting for a reality that this society would grow and be very different than any society that had ever existed, the American ideal. However, there was irony in the American ideal. The irony of the American ideal simply stated that we request from our oppressors, at that time, the British government, freedom for all men. As a matter of fact, they went on to draft a document that would be echoed by every country around the globe who desired to be free. And that simple freedom simply said that each and every man had the right to freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as they were making those bold and true statements in cabins that weren't fit for human beings, there was these Africans. There were these Africans that had been brought over not for freedom, not for liberty, not for the pursuit of happiness. These Africans were to be brought over and to be made the burden of freedom, liberty, and justice. And the truth of the matter is they served that purpose well. They served that purpose well. They worked from sunup to sundown, from can't see at night to can't see during the day. They served that purpose well. But while serving that purpose, They were in the fields and they were screaming and singing in the fields. They were in their churches. They were in their small homes. And they cried for a day that their children would have opportunities that they currently didn't have. So they began to fight. From 1619, they begin to fight. In 1812, they continue to fight. From 1860 to 1864, they continue to fight. During the time of lynching, they began to fight. Through the civil rights movement, they continue to fight. Through black liberation, they continue to fight. They were always fighting for liberty. They were always fighting for justice. They were always fighting for what every American except for them took for granted, which was the right for the pursuit of happiness. So in this time, we found ourselves at another point of the fight. We just at another point of the fight. See, the fight didn't start in 1972 or 73 or 75 or 1980. The fight started long before then, and this is a continuation of that fight. So as we look at America right now, and we see in every imaginable state, there's a challenge against what our forefathers saw, that we would have the opportunity to pursue justice. There's a challenge to squeeze this democracy and to deny justice. And there's a particular fight that has fell on the doorsteps of not only the America that we know, but also the America that had been persecuted. And that is the America that created unjustly a criminal justice system that was not justice, but was more criminal. And we know that from the early 1970s up until this point, that the criminal justice system has unjustly grown from 400,000 people in 1975 to almost 3 million people right now, with the majority of those people being people of African descent, being black and brown people, and even poor whites, but the majority of those people being African. We have to push forward. When Marilyn Mosby emerged on the steps of the War Memorial Building in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore City was on fire. And if she would not have stepped and made the statements that she made at that point, the Baltimore that we enjoy right now, we may be putting it back together, literally brick by brick, because those children of those slaves were tired of getting pushed on by the criminal justice system. And we want the world to know that the black community and Americans throughout, from California to Boston to Florida, they do not see this as an attack on Marilyn Mosby. They see this as an attack on justice, on freedom, and equality. This is bigger than Marilyn Mosby. And we have a media that is gathered here today that has to ask some critical questions. Ask some very critical questions. Is this justice? Is this pursuit of Marilyn Mosby politically motivated? They must ask the question, are there questions around those who are choosing to prosecute Marilyn Mosby that maybe deserve an answer? The burden of the proof is not on Marilyn Mosby. The burden of proof is on America. The burden of proof is to decide what America will we live in. Will we live in the McCarthy era? We know that there's a history of when there's a shift or desire for change, there's a rise for those who want to keep things the same. Do we want to live in the J. Edgar Hoover era, when there was unjust pursuit, in particular of Black leaders, so that the dream of Dr. King would not be fulfilled? I'm simply saying to the press and to Americans is that we have to see this fight as something greater than what we are currently seeing it. But I'm here today to be the master of ceremony and to invite a few of my friends who not only stand with Marilyn Mosby, but they stand for America and they stand for justice. I would like to invite, as our first person, who will take us a little further in the program, a brother who's a true freedom fighter, not only for Baltimoreans and Colombians, but for the whole state of Maryland. He's the president of the state conference of the NAACP. Please welcome to the microphone, Willie Flowers.
Good afternoon. Thanks, D. Chase. Thanks for the organizers for inviting me. And I think we can get right down to business, because as he's explained, and I can answer the question, this entire thing is politically motivated by forces that are traditional in Baltimore City, who attack elected leaders who are working to do things in the community that's been piled on by the challenges of restoration of a city, the idea of building a city, the idea of building a public education system that works for students of the city so they can be vibrant members of the community. And the example of what it takes to create that image of a beautiful community is what you see with the Mosby family. You see a mother and a father, a nuclear family. Not only are they a nuclear family with children in the public school systems, a nuclear family that made a decision intentionally to move into a community to help rebuild it, but they're also a family who, both educated people who came back to, in the case of the president of the city council, Nick Mosby, came back to his hometown to help contribute in the same way that we all do and dream of how we can fix the community. Well, they actually pulled it off. Not only did he run, and he didn't win the first time for a city council, but he did not give up, came back and ran and became a member of the city council. He did not give up, but he brought his family along, his wife along, little children along, to be a part of what he was trying to build for his hometown. And as it happens, his wife decided to run. But what she didn't know was that even before she got elected, that there were attacks on the sitting state's attorney when her husband was first elected to office. The attacks on Patricia Jessamy are well documented. Not only was she attacked and ridiculed as a state's attorney, but the sitting mayor, who became the governor, incentivized the role so that they could get the right person for them to run, only because Patricia Jessamy didn't manage the state's attorney office the way he wanted her to run it. And this is the same attack on Marilyn Mosby today, in that she's not running the state's attorney's office the way those who want her to run it. So when she came down the stairs, as D. Chase explained, after the Freddie Gray murder in 2014, I think it was, everything shifted because she didn't have the shackles of any other entity on her legs to do what they wanted her to do. So when you do something like that, the attack becomes, as you saw it, people in the media saw it, you reported on it, the attacks were on her actually, before they went after her credibility, they went after her at the ballot. And when the ballot didn't work, this system of bullying was, I guess, the policy at the time, When the ballot didn't work, they went after her credibility, the credibility of her family, the credibility and audacity of her family to have basic business initiatives to help stabilize a family in a city with challenges. And that was, I guess, 2 years ago. That attack, while well publicized, and the announcement of an investigation that was triggered right here in the city, when that didn't work, we come to this, an attack farther on her credibility of her spending her own money, her making decisions about money that she earned, her making decisions about money that she has created through a public service job that she earned, when the other criticism was that she could not participate in a business initiative of her own making. So I guess in common terms, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So now the scrutiny is on her making a decision about her savings and her own personal accounts so that she can build a future for her city while being attacked by a U.S. attorney and having to do something that nobody wants to do, and that's spend your savings, the little money that you have, on attorneys to combat a case when both members of your family are under attack. And that's what we're left with. But the message here is to the community, because they've done the bullying job, they've gone after the ballot, and they've attacked the business of this family. What we have to do as a community is to support them at the ballot box, support them during this period, to be stewards and to do for them what they have done for the community. And that's to be detailed in our support for them, to be detailed in our attitude toward squashing out all this negativity about what they do with their money. What a family does with their money is their business. What a family does with their money is their business. And I was so happy to hear her say, because this is duplicated throughout the history of attacks on our Black leaders, from Dr. King to Malcolm X. When she said, "I'm built for this," she wasn't just speaking for herself, she was speaking for the city of Baltimore. And the city of Baltimore is built for this. Not only are we built for it while we're under attack here, we also want to focus on next step for the ballot box. So I encourage everyone listening to this broadcast to be prepared to support Marilyn Mosby, to be prepared to support the president of the city council, Nick Mosby, while they go through this, and to support and pray for this family. Support and pray for this family, because it's extremely important, and to be prepared once again to go to the ballot box to make sure that these attacks mean nothing, to make sure that the energy that you used the first time she was elected. And I'll tell you a personal story. I was driving along Cold Spring during that election year, and the only person I saw in a crowd of supporters of her opponent was Nick Mosby, and he was there supporting his wife. He was there supporting his wife then. He supported his wife every time I've spoken to him. He supported his wife during all of this, and because he supported her, I'm going to support him, and I'm going to support this family. And I want to thank them for allowing me to speak and to promote this effort, not just toward their support, but the support they need at the ballot box on this June. I want to invite to the stage Ms. Daphne, who has been working in the trenches with an organization called Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters. She's a fighter at the grassroots level, stimulated a huge conversation about what we must do as a community to support families who have had the challenge of having their children murdered in the city of Baltimore. I want to invite her up right now.
Sir, do you mind saying this really your first and last name for the record?
Sorry, that's Willie Flowers, WILLIE FLOWERS.
The next speaker as well.
quick housekeeping is that we had a change in order. So I'll just give them all to you so that it will flow a little bit easier. Ms. Daphne Alston, Moms of Murdered Sons and Daughters, is next. And she will be followed by Reverend Dr. Kevin Slayton, Slayton, of Northwood Appold United Methodist Church, followed by Nicole Mundell from Out for Justice. And then we will introduce A. Scott Bolden, who is the attorney for Marilyn Mosby, who will be able to speak with you guys about specifics of the case. And we will go briefly, but steadfastly and forward with our speakers. Thank you. Ms. Daphne, come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daphne Austin, the co-founder of Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters, United Incorporated. Today, I stand from a long heritage of strong Black women, from my grandmother to my great-grandmother to my mom and to myself, very strong Black women. I have a daughter named Shakira, who's a very strong Black woman. I have an adopted daughter, Marilyn Mosby, who's a strong Black woman and also a strong friend. And I stand here today to say, out of all the prosecutors in the state of Maryland, from the counties to the waterways and the byways, Miss Marilyn Mosby is the only person that meets with us mothers, come sit with us, share in our pain, and try to get work done so we can have our cases solved. Over 300 some homicides in Baltimore City a year and hundreds in the other counties altogether. And she's the only person who ever took the time to reach out to us and say that she's with us. So yes, I stand here today on behalf of Ms. Marilyn Mosby. I stand here strong and bold because Ms. Marilyn is strong and bold. We will no longer, as Black women, sit back and tolerate the way we are being treated in this country called America. We work hard in this country, we give of ourselves, we have taken care of everybody, we see about everybody's needs, and now it's our time, and we don't want anyone in our way. Today we say enough is enough. I couldn't imagine paying for college and sending my daughter to school and making sure that she has everything she needs to tell her she can dream big. You can become anything you want to be. You can become a mayor, state's attorney, a doctor, a lawyer, or anything. And she gets to her dream spot, and then there's all kind of obstacles in her way. I couldn't dream to stay in here and not do anything about it. And I'm encouraging the whole community, the whole state of Maryland, the whole nation to join with us Black women. We are wonderfully made, we are smart, we are blessed, and we're not stupid. We will no longer be hung by the trenches of anybody's injustices that come to us daily. We love unconditionally. We love our children unconditionally. And we're saying today that no more, enough is enough. When you deal with Miss Marilyn Mosby, you have to deal with all of us. And I don't think anyone's arms is strong enough to box with God or to box with us. So I'm asking you today to go down inside of yourself and in your hearts and find yourself a way to stand with Miss Marilyn Mosby today. Not only as our state's attorney, but as a Black mother and a Black leader and a female. And we say today, get out of our way. No one can stop us. We are now unstoppable and unmoving. And have a good day. Next, I'll ask for Dr. Reverend Kenya to come up, please.
Good afternoon. I am, even though it doesn't look like it on my face, I'm excited to stand in support of our state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, and her family, her husband, Nick. We share something in common. That is, our feet had literally been tattooed by the soul that runs through Tuskegee, Alabama. So not only is she built for it, she's literally rooted and struggled. 50 years ago, 5 decades, the Baltimore Sun reported 330 murders in Baltimore City. Just 2 weeks ago, the same paper reported 337 murders. Now, I know it'd be very easy to blame this on one person, but this is a problem that is not on the hands of one person. It didn't start 10, 15 years ago. It's been here for a while. The problem is too many folks who are in a position to do something have been complicit, because a lot of folks have benefited from the suffering and oppression of people who look like me and are of color. And along comes, as history always does, some black woman who's got the courage to sit down and refuse to go on to get along. Over those 50 years, I imagine, I didn't do the data, that a number of African-American homes that look like mine were literally turned upside down because the strength, the foundations of their family were removed. The men, for selling something we call weed, marijuana, back then probably reefer. And now here we are, 2022. That same product will make millionaires out of white men and white women. This little black woman had enough sense to say, I'm not gonna send any more these folks to jail and upset houses and destroy communities at the expense of people who look like me. And so I showed up today, one, because I like him, but two, because I'm a preacher. And three, because it's a King holiday. And I don't want you to forget in all your reporting that you do today that Dr. King was many things, but first he was a preacher. He was a preacher who was birthed out of the experience of the black church that believed that liberation and oppression and the uplift of people who've been oppressed was something that we were all due. And so he spent his entire life doing what I came here to do today. That is to lead the march, to go and tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Let them go. Stop following, stop trying to find things on these people. Allow them to do their jobs. And then lastly, I would remind those folks who look like them in positions similar to theirs, the words of the great theologian Martin Niemöller, the German theologian who said famously, when they came for the socialists, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the Germans. I didn't say anything because I wasn't a German. But then they came for me. For those folks who wear black and brown skin, who sit in these high offices, one day it could be you.
Thank you, Rev. One day it could be you. That's a big statement. And I repeat the question. What is the America that we are going to live in? Are we going to live in the McCarthy era, where Americans' lives were turned upside down on random witch hunts? Are we going to live in the era where the FBI began a program called COINTELPRO that disrupted black leadership to ensure that the successes that we are enjoying right now didn't happen? This is on our doorstep, America. This is not about Marilyn Mosby, but we appreciate her courage to stand and fight. Next, I would like to introduce a young woman who is literally fighting for justice every day. She's a friend of mine. She leads a lot of different efforts, but today she's here to support our state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, Nicole Hanson Mundell.
A little short, so I'm gonna bring this down. Again, my name is Nicole Hanson Mundell. And thank you, Derek, for so eloquently trying to categorize who I am and what I do. What I do for many people in Baltimore is I advocate for them, those individuals who find themselves on the opposite side of the law, those individuals who are in our communities very disadvantaged, those individuals who do not have some of the same access as many of us have in this room. And one of the things that we stand on, those of us who are in the legal community, those of us who may not be attorneys, but practice and educate ourselves about the law, is that there is a presumption of innocence. And just like many of us, Ms. Mosby deserves that as well. One of my colleagues talked about staying out of people's personal business. This is not about the fact that Ms. Mosby didn't do her job as a prosecutor. This is about the media and the public deciding to stick their nose in somebody's personal matters. Throughout my years working in advocacy, Ms. Mosby has done more in terms of standing on a presumption of innocence than many of her predecessors, right? She has been open to advocating for laws and policies that seek to change the way our bail system and our pre-trial system operates. She was one of the only prosecutors that I saw during a global pandemic urging our governor to release those individuals whose charges will likely be dropped in the first place, who encouraged our governor to send resources here to Baltimore, as opposed to talking about how bad the city is. It was her that said, "Governor, bring resources to the city. Ensure that individuals had access." It was this woman who brought herself to Annapolis on her own accord to ensure that individuals who found themselves on the wrong end of the gun trace task force, that they would be financially compensated for some of the ills that gun trace task force bestowed on Baltimore residents. There are people still suffering today because of a group of law enforcement officers who decided that they would treat people any kind of way. And so because she decided that these individuals should be brought to justice, there are people who are making a decision that because she went against that status quo, that we're going to show her who we are. That's essentially what they're saying. That because this woman decided to stand on the right side of justice, that they're going to show her that that's not okay for Black women to do. And so I just want to make sure that the citizens of Baltimore withhold your judgment, because just like you deserve the presumption of innocence, so does she. And so I know that there are formerly incarcerated people across the city who have turned their lives around, because let's be clear, this is not a woman who is just supporting people who break the law, right? She is supporting individuals who have made a decision to turn their lives around. And that is who she supports, right? So she's not a person who's just supporting any old criminal out here. No, she's supporting individuals who have made some bad choices, but decided to turn their lives around. One of the only prosecutors I know in the state that actually has a victim's integrity unit, right? That individuals, and I hope I'm saying the name of the office, right? But she's willing. What's the name of it? Yes, right? And also, she's been a part of bringing individuals home who have served decades behind the walls because of unjust legal system. The office is actually working. One of the only state's attorneys that I know who actually supports individuals, young people who find themselves on the opposite side of the law and gives them an opportunity to rebuild their lives because she know what they're facing out there in the streets of Baltimore. So again, let's make sure as the public, we withhold judgment and allow for the legal system to do what the legal system does. And let's remember that she deserves the presumption of innocence. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and again, thank you, media, for being here. Our community needs heroes. We need someone who has the expertise, who has the experience, who has the relationships to call injustice, injustice, and then put together a legal case to ensure that justice is indeed preserved. The gentleman who I have the pleasure of bringing before you has been called to this moment. And again, I'll tell you, the backdrop of this is Dr. King. We're on Dr. King's holiday, and we're having a conversation about justice. We're having a conversation about freedom. We're having a conversation about equality. We're having a conversation about the American dream. And those who are called to make sure it happens, such as a Marilyn Mosby, we are called to this on this day. But the gentleman who I'm calling before you now has the responsibility to make sure that Marilyn gets a fair shot. Let's welcome to the microphone her attorney Bowden. Thank you.
Good evening or good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. That's right, absolutely. I want to thank all of our speakers who are here, who stand with Marilyn Mosby. If you are here and you stand with Marilyn Mosby, join me in saying, I stand with Marilyn Mosby. 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 One more time. I stand with Marilyn Mosby. Let me thank you all for being here today. This is an important time for the city of Baltimore. On behalf of Marilyn Mosby, I thank you for being here. Many of you asked me, how is Marilyn doing? She's a tough prosecutor herself. She's got a family. She's been through a lot this year. She's built for this, but she's also a humble public servant. Every day, she gets up to serve the people for the state of Baltimore and for the city of Baltimore. I don't want you to forget that. She is the chief law enforcement officer for the city of Baltimore, a state elected official who's being charged 4 months before her re-election campaign. 4 months before her re-election campaign to affect and in effect the result of that campaign. Let's not be confused about it. Let's not be confused about it. I've been on this journey with Marilyn and her family for several months, over a year. This case started as a criminal tax investigation. The government put that in writing, if you will. They teamed up with the State Bar Association Disciplinary Board because she wouldn't give the state board, she wouldn't give them backup to her 2019 and 2020 tax returns. And by the way, the 2020 tax returns had not been filed. She didn't have to give those up. And so the U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland went to them, talked with them, and then began a criminal tax investigation investigating her taxes. I'm going to talk about animus in a minute, but everything I tell you today ties into the animus. They opened up a criminal tax investigation simply because she would not produce backup to an agency that did not deserve them legally. They then investigated not only campaign finance, they went to her babysitters, they went to her hairdressers, they went to her friends, they went to churches challenging charitable contributions. Listen to me. I'm going to talk about animus in a minute. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars gratuitously investigating a sitting public servant who filed their taxes and went line by line regarding charitable contributions. Who does that? Who does that? Marilyn Mosby stands today as an innocent person. I don't care whether she's been indicted or not. She is an innocent person. And she is not a convicted person, public, private, or judicially. Marilyn Mosby is innocent as we stand here with these community leaders. They then referred the criminal tax case to DOJ to get approval for it. And that's the first time we saw the recommendations for charges. One of the recommendations in regard to her tax returns were for her tax year 2020 returns, right? This was in 2021. Except one problem. She hadn't even filed her taxes for tax year 2020. And they were alleging a loss or a subject amount of money of $4,000 or $12,000, and she hadn't even filed her taxes yet. I'm going to talk about animus in a minute. They did ask, and they did also on their recommendation sheet to DOJ, they talked about perjury. And I'm going to talk about due process in a minute. They recommended a charge for perjury. At the one meeting we had with DOJ that's allowed under the law, we asked them a simple question. My warrior lawyer friend, where's my warrior lawyer? They're right here. We asked them, we said, well, what's the statement? If you got perjury under the law, you got to have a statement. So tell us the statement. You can't prosecute my client for perjury and give her due process and some reasonableness and fairness. And 8 prosecutors sat in that meeting with us and refused to tell us the statement upon which she was accused of lying about. How can that be? This is a sitting, publicly elected official, and they're accusing her of perjury now, false statements now, and I can tell you, all 4 charges are false. I can tell you we have exculpatory evidence that we wanted to share with them, did share with them. We offered her up to the grand jury. We offered her up to be interviewed. But when you're not interested in justice and fairness and equity, you don't take those meetings. You ignore the numerous emails. You probably don't read the defense memorandum because you want a conviction and an indictment at all costs, not because you think she's guilty. Oh no, that's too hard under the law. You do that because you want to affect the reelection 4 or 5 months out while she's in full campaign mode and have 2 opponents. That brings me to Leo Wise. He's so special. He's so special. In the last election, the lead prosecutor, the driver of the narrative, negative narrative, he gives not once, but twice to her opponents 4 years ago. Sees nothing wrong with that, right? The prior beef between them and the gun trace and who's leaking and what, they beefed before. He then gives 2 contributions, not 1. We go to DOJ, Office of Professional Responsibility, and we say this needs to be investigated. He needs to be removed from the case, and there needs to be an internal investigation on why, how, who, and what drove this investigation of Marilyn Mosby. We know it started during the Trump campaign or during the Trump leadership. We know that Donald Trump called for her to be prosecuted. We know his AG singled her out before a police conference about her job and being a progressive, liberal prosecutor who does her job, but not like the conservatives or the status quo. Bringing some equity to how you prosecute crimes, right? Because Black people and brown people are significantly affected negatively by the old way, by the conservative way, by the Black versus white way, right? Absolutely. So she's gonna change that narrative. She's gonna stop prosecuting prostitutes. She's gonna stop prosecuting low-level drug offenses. And the numbers in this city, despite what you hear and read and what you all write, those numbers are down. And that's not me saying that. That's the reports from the college reported at Johns Hopkins. And so no one would investigate Leo Wise. There was a new attorney, new U.S. attorney, Eric Barron. We asked him to investigate. We gave him everything and said, give us a meeting. Refused to meet with us. We offered her up for a grand jury, an interview, refused to even respond. These are the forces. These are the dark forces that we are up against. These are facts too. This isn't conjecture by some criminal defense lawyer because of the rantings of a criminal defense lawyer. These are facts. There are documents to support this. And so my client has been through a lot. Legal fees, friendships affected, her inability to give 100% to serving the residents because it's either the state ethics board or it's the bar association or it's a U.S. attorney's office. And by the way, she's not driving this negative narrative, right? Those agencies are. And we know that goes back to her choice to prosecute police officers in regard to Freddie Gray. I don't care what the outcome was. There's some cases, I'm a former prosecutor, there's some cases where cases have to be tried and done. Justice has to be served. And so when you talk about racial animus in this case, we know that Leo Wise, based on published reports, served in the Office of Congressional Ethics and targeted Congressional Black Caucus members. He left there, and his newest target is Marilyn Mosby. We know there's personal animus because of personal beefs about turf and the gun tracer piece between them. And then there's political animus, the contributions that were given. And the political animus is that he and others in the law enforcement community certainly don't want her to get another term. Where I'm here to tell you, Marilyn Mosby is not going to be the only one on trial. And we want a quick trial. We're ready to go. The quickest is 70 days, right? Election's 5 months away. Others believe that it'll go 6 months or a year. Oh, we're pushing for trial in 70 days, right? Because we don't want this to affect the political outcome of this race. And so we're going to try to get a trial as soon as possible. But Marilyn Mosby is not the only one that's going to be on trial. The U.S. Attorney's Office for Maryland is going to be on trial. The criminal justice system and its attacks on Black female progressive prosecutors is going to be on trial. The whole system in Baltimore and how you go after Black elected officials, Black female elected officials, Black liberal prosecutors all around this country, it's going to be on trial when we get there. We're going to do our best to get answers and truth and justice, not only for Marilyn Mosby, but for the citizens of Baltimore and Maryland and this criminal justice system and the prosecutors that drive the negative narrative towards Black and brown people and Black female progressive prosecutors. You can bank on it. And so I'm here to thank you all for standing with us, for standing with this fight, because we just begun. Usually I'm pretty Natalie clad, but this is my fighting wardrobe. I know you look good, man. But I'm fighting. We're about to do a fight, and so this is what we got to do. And so I hope that those who are listening, I hope that those who are standing behind me, and I hope that those who believe in a fair criminal justice system, who believe in Marilyn Mosby, right? And even those that may have questions, we want you to stand with us, support us, because in the end, she is innocent until proven guilty. And the criminal justice system and the prosecutions that have wrongfully brought this case against her, they will be on trial as well. Thank you.
Scott is prepared to take a couple of questions. I'll start right here.
Looking at the decision to make the decision to file for COVID relief, basically, do you think that the U.S. attorney was ill-advised when said this is okay to do? Looking at it in retrospect, was she ill-advised?
Was she ill-advised by whom?
On her legal advisors that you guys said she got advice
No,
about?
no, it was her money, one. And two, she certainly got advice from professionals, right? And three, if you weren't negatively affected financially, one way or the other, directly or indirectly by COVID, right? If you weren't affected, raise your hand. If you weren't affected. If you were not affected by COVID financially, whether you kept your job or not, raise your hand.
So,
Really
which,
quickly, I want to correct something he said. He said she got COVID relief funds, and that is not.
That is not true.
I mean-
This was not PPP. This was 401k. Hold on. This is relief from her 401k, not public funds.
but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was okay to request those funds. Are you saying that? So which one of these allegations does she really legitimately have on this?
I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. I'm telling you, she's not only innocent, but we have professionals who she consulted with, and she qualifies on one of those under the statute. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Roland, looking at speaking of the COVID, using the pandemic to pull money out of it, was it for her business? Was it one of her businesses that was negatively impacted? Because that's something that you had said, but her spokesperson had said that business was not operational while she was in office as state attorney. So which one is it?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into a swearing match about that. I'm telling you that she qualified for those monies and she was advised on those monies. And I'm not going to get into a tat of what's been said before, done, and what have you.
So is that business operational now? Was her spokesperson?
I don't know what you mean by operational. There were other businesses involved. In fact, the U.S. attorney was investigating those other businesses, so they had to be operational.
Her spokesperson said it wasn't.
I don't know how you define operational. I'm telling you, those businesses were running and they were being pursued and they were legally on the books. Next question.
Next question. Go ahead, right there.
Do you believe there are more charges coming? Do you have any reason to believe that this is the end of the indictment, that there could be more coming at all?
I have no idea, but I will tell you this, whether more indictments come or not, our position is the same. And we certainly battled the government, the federal government, in regard to any tax implications. And I can't comment any further on that, but our position won't change.
Mr. Roland, a public look at her businesses indicated they never made any money, don't have any employees, never made a loss. And you were suggested today, and I've heard you suggest on the broadcast, that you have documentation, exculpatory evidence to exonerate her on those charges. Would you share those documents or at least explain how she qualifies for something on a business, if that's the case, that only exists on paper?
Well, those are mutually exclusive issues. These are businesses were startup, okay? And as a result, that does not disqualify her, along with some other facts that we have to present that would certainly absolve her of any wrongdoing here. Next. Yep.
Attorney Bo, you spoke specifically to the impact of African-American leadership being prosecuted unlawfully or just like a witch hunt scenario. What do you say to the young people in the African-American community who are looking to be the next Marilyn Mosby, who will end up being impacted by things of this nature in the future?
Well, I would tell them to keep the faith, to be strong, that public leadership is not for the weary or those who want rest, to protect yourself at all times. And even then, when there are forces, darker forces working against you because of your integrity and you making tough decisions, going against the grain, going against the establishment, unfortunately, not just here in Baltimore, but elsewhere can bring you legal scrutiny that will change your life for the rest of your life, unfortunately. You got to be careful. And even then, it's not safe.
So Baltimore's crime, she's a top prosecutor. It's going to be a difficult fight. How do you ensure residents that she's going to be able to balance the litigation and maintaining, making sure that murder victims get justice and things like that.
Well, certainly arrests have to be made. I keep I keep reading how somehow she's blamed for homicides in this country, or rather in Baltimore. She is the only blame or responsibility when someone is arrested to bring justice to them, and that is to prosecute them, right? And so I don't put the murder rate in her bailiwick. I put that in when people are arrested and good investigators do their work and they bring them and then they get prosecuted, right? And so I have every confidence, and I can tell the public every confidence she is going to completely and continue to do her job. That's one thing. And we're going to be able, the lawyers are going to do what the lawyers have to do on the defense side. And that's really not a balancing act. That just comes with being Marilyn Mosby.
Looking at this, the chart, counts 2 and 4 about the mortgage application. The indictment says that she didn't know that there was a tax lien on the property that she also owned with her husband. Can you explain how that's possible given the IRS sent them multiple letters? Can you explain how this spouse might do something you don't know or anybody? Everybody got to know everything about everybody.
Well,
They both sent a letter. According to the indictment, the IRS sent them each letter. Each a letter.
Yeah.
She just opened the mail.
I'm not gonna dignify your last comment. Let me just say this. I looked for the tax lien myself. Could not find it.
I have a copy.
I know you do. You know how we found it? We got it from the press. I don't know where you got it from. I'm not going to ask you where you got it from, but we certainly didn't get it. My clients didn't get it, and it wasn't delivered or to them in the normal way, if you will. I don't know about all these other additional letters, but as I've said before, and I've said in writing, my client did not know about the tax liens until later. But that's irrelevant because right now the indictments don't cover any criminal tax charges. My only point is she did not know, she did not lie, and that'll come out at trial. I think that's it, right? All right, thank you.
That's it for questions, everybody. Really quickly, number one, thank you. Thank you to everyone standing behind me, in front of me. Particular thank you to A. Scott Bolden. Really quickly, for those who are watching, especially on our live feeds, for those who are here in the media who want to present a balanced report, there are ways that you can support, that you can square this out. We want everyone to share this press conference today, if you can. Like, share, do whatever you need to do. We also need everybody to vote. Go vote. The future of our city depends on everybody out there making their voice heard and voting. Register today. We also want you to sign and share a petition in order to support what's happening. That will be posted at the end of this event. And then you can also donate to the Mosby Defense Fund at mosbydefensefund.com. I'm going to now turn this over to Jay Wendell Gordon for a couple of comments just before we come to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Robin.
I just love us.
A. Scott Bolden, one of the finest attorneys that I know. I just want to say that at this point in our lives, we're not going to adjust to injustice. Say that there is an army of people who will stand by, stand with, and be with Marilyn Mosby throughout the duration of this trial. Marilyn Mosby, of course, is a friend. So is Nick Mosby. They're both friends. But I'm not here because of that friendship alone. I'm here because these two stalwarts in our community have been targeted and been under attack since some believe that there was too intense of a consolidation of power within the Mosby household. This thing goes back. You have all the alphabet soup involved in the prosecution of Marilyn Mosby. And if you remember, this didn't have anything to do with Marilyn Mosby's personal business when it first started, this entire investigation. They were investigating wrongdoing in office.
When that failed, they started investigating other things and they brought other folks involved. And at the end of the day, they were able to come up with an indictment. As A. Scott said, 4 to 5 months before she starts her campaign for re-election. So we're not fooled by what has transpired in the Marilyn Mosby case. And we're not impressed by the fact that we have this African-American US attorney who has signed the pleadings on Marilyn Mosby's indictment. It started under Trump, but it ends with him. He could short circuit it, or he can watch it play out to the end. I expect, and I believe deep down in my heart, that Marilyn Mosby will prevail against these charges. Now, I know there are a lot of questions asked, a lot of sparring going back and forth with the attorneys. And the attorneys may not be able to provide you with all the answers today because you can't give it all up in a press conference. And although we intend to litigate in the court of public opinion, the real fight occurs in the court of law. Marilyn Mosby's defense team, of which I am not a part, so you don't have to ask the question, is well fortified to engage in this type of combat, and they will prevail as well. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for coming. That will conclude.
All right, I think we are live. If we are live, just put your thumbs up, send me a thumbs up. We're gonna get some reactions from our online audience. Want to thank everyone for just taking a moment to recognize the gravity upon which we stand. As I said before in my opening statement, this has 5% to do with Marilyn Mosby, and it has 95% the pursuit of justice for us as a people. This is a continuation of all that we have done to ensure that we have freedom, justice, and the right to pursue happiness. There are things that you can do in order to support us in this effort. One of the number one things that you can do is like and share this press conference, all right? And give your honest and true reactions. The second thing that you can do, if you're not registered to vote, register today. The bedstone of the American democracy and democracy period is a free election, and the only way to participate is to register. Thirdly, sign and share the petition that will be posted at the end of this event. At the end of this event, there will be a petition. Please sign that petition. And last but not least, if we are serious, because those who have historically stood in the pathway of our progress in this country and throughout the world, they have no problem giving to their cause. And what we need you to do is to oblige us by donating to the Mosby Defense Fund. Whether this is a short fight or a long fight, it's going to be a costly fight. And when we have the opportunity to live in a moment where we get the opportunity to stand next to our leaders, we should respond appropriately. I listen to many of you, and you say, if Dr. King was living, if I lived during the time of Dr. King, I would have. I hear you, and you say, if I would have lived during the time of Malcolm X, I would have. If I would have lived at the time of Harriet Tubman, I would have. If I would have lived at the time of Paul Robeson, I would have. If I would have lived at the time of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, I would have. Well, now this fight is on your steps, and you don't have the chance to wish upon a star. You have the opportunity to actually do something. So I'm going to repeat to you that you can continue to participate in this by number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or number 4, donating to the Marilyn Mosby Defense Fund. Like and share this message. Register to vote. And again, sign the petition. We're going to have a few of the esteemed guests who participated in the press conference to come on, and you get the opportunity to make a few statements to them via your computer, and they have the opportunity to give some statements to take us further into this fight. I believe we got Jay Wendell Gordon. Jay Wendell, how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thanks, man. Glad everybody's here, man. It's a great turnout today. And we're out here fighting, man. We're not just going to stand. We're going to fight.
Right. Hey, Jay, can you ask those who are in that room to go to the front room or whatever? You can hear the back room. Yes, you can hear them in the background.
I think
okay, I understood. We'll continue to fight through. We'll fight. But Jay, you've stood at the center of defense for some very, very important things. How important is Marilyn Mosby's case to the continuation of freedom?
I think it's extremely important because that's the sense and you attack black women. Black women have been actively involved in the process for the last decade, even more, understand more intensely. And I truly believe that the way they're going after Marilyn Mosby will have a chilling on other young women, men as well, who desire to serve the public in a very public way, who desire to become public servants. So this not only is a setback for the Mosby campaign, but it's also something that can actually stymie the political growth of African Americans in Baltimore City and beyond.
Definitely. Jay, another question. Baltimore has been at the center, seems to be at the center of this narrative justice movement. What do you think we need to do as a community to encourage the national community to continue to come and help us fight this battle in Baltimore?
Well, that's a great question. And this is something that I learned over the last 6 to 8 months. It's not going to be done by the lawyers alone. We need lawyers, doctors, social scientists, activist community, faith-based community, civil rights organizations. We need to work. We all have certain training now. We've been educated. We've been out in the field. We graduated from the College of Streets, got a PhD in how to make ends meet. So we are perfectly qualified to take on these challenges. Now, what do we do in situations like this? We need to support our local heroes. We need to support those who supported us throughout their tenure in public office. And we need to support those who sacrifice every day to make our city a better place. So I just truly believe that it's going to take the help of everybody, and everybody needs to be involved. We have a U.S. attorney who they've appointed. He's a black man. And I just kind of believe that he's been put in place to go after other black men and provide a cover, or other black people and provide a cover to those who come next. So I'm really concerned about our U.S. attorney and what his agenda is. I don't know why he decided to go after Marilyn Mosby or continue this hunt against Marilyn Mosby to try to make a name for himself. This isn't the type of name that I believe is positive for a U.S. attorney to have, where his office is accused of targeting individuals, going after individuals from Kenny Ravenel, okay, to now Marilyn Mosby. We went after a powerhouse defense attorney, and now they're going after Marilyn Mosby. And I just don't think this isn't the reputation that you want, especially in times like these, and when we're trying to, change the narrative and bring some truth and justice and equality to our judicial system. I'm very disappointed in the U.S. attorney. Even though he inherited this, he could have stopped it, and he chose not to. He could have recused himself from it, and he chose not to. Instead, he decided he chose to sign the pleadings, and that I just find that disquieting.
Hey, Jay, we know that there's a separation of offices. You have a legislative, a judicial. We have a legislative, we have a judicial system, and we have an executive office.
That's right.
In this particular case, what do you think is there a responsibility of a Kamala Harris, all right, who has been in a very similar position in terms of her responsibility to the citizens of California, understanding how critical that office is? What do you think the responsibility of Kamala Harris is to kind of intercede in some type of way in this particular matter?
I think
she have a responsibility?
I think she should weigh in. She has experience being a prosecutor. She has experience being in the executive office, and she has the experience being in the legislative branch. She's been in all branches of government. She knows what Marilyn Mosby is going through. Call her up on the telephone. Speak your mind about this situation. This thing started out as an investigation into Marilyn Mosby's conduct in public office. This thing has now meandered into or devolved into an investigation of her and her private affairs, and for which that there was no real fairness in the investigation. Marilyn Mosby tried to provide information to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She made herself available to a grand jury. They allow police officers to testify in front of grand juries. They allow witnesses to testify in front of grand juries, even defendants, even the accused are allowed at times to testify in front of grand jury. They wouldn't take phone calls. When you're up on the federal level, that's a different level of jurisprudence. There's supposed to be professional courtesies that extend mutually. If you claim you have a case against someone's client, this is the federal government. No, we'll show you what we have. We don't lose. We don't come after you unless we have something. But in this case, there was a hush that covered the room, and that hush spoke volumes. There's something amiss in the way this prosecution is proceeding, and
Hey, well, we thank you, Jay Wendell, for always being on target and on task. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Share this broadcast. Register the vote. Please, by all means, we need you to donate to the Marilyn Mosby Defense Fund. And we thank you. We thank you for tuning in. You could have been any other place but here. All right, and tune in in about 2 to 5 minutes. All right, now we have the attorney, A. Scott Bolden, who is going to give you a little bit more insight into what's going on in the Marilyn Mosby pursuit of justice.
What are you doing?
Hey, attorney, how are you, sir?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Oh, man, doing absolutely phenomenal. Glad to have you here in Baltimore.
Glad to be here.
Listening to some of the questions of the media, do you think just listening to the questions that the media has made a decision already to be on one side or the other side of this case without hearing the facts?
I wouldn't say that. The media's got their job. I don't have any issue with the questions. The problem is that they want to try the case in the media, even though I'm trying to give information at a very high level. And so when they ask questions about the specifics of the indictment and the defense, That's for court. That's not to get into the details in the public opinion. I've shared a fair amount of information and my feelings on the case, and I'm free to do that. But there's a lot of work to be done in this case, and we're going to be doing that between now and presentment and the trial.
So, Attorney Bolden, how can other organizations, individuals help and to support Marilyn in her effort for justice?
Well, you certainly can talk to all of your friends, all of your colleagues about holding their fire, holding their judgment. You know, Marilyn Mosby is innocent until proven guilty. When she walks in the courtroom for presentment, when she walks in the courtroom for trial, she's innocent. When they pick a jury, and when we put on evidence and the government puts on evidence, she sits there as an innocent woman. We cannot lose sight of that. So that's one thing. And secondly, then those who would be giving and raising funds, whether it's $5, $10, $20, $30, whatever the case might be, you can always give to support our legal defense fund. I think you talked about that earlier, and we talked about it at the press conference. And then just really believing and sharing her story of what she's been through over the last year and why this is a race and political and personally based prosecution by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland. And I don't care whether a Black U.S. attorney signed off on it or not. This began under the Trump administration, and this indictment is the fruit of over a year of persecution by her and her personal family, and she's been through a great deal. And so just keep her in your prayers, lift her up in your prayers, and God's going to bless us all when this is over.
No doubt. Another question that seems to come up, and this is the question around the idea of being affected by COVID. You made a statement and you asked everyone in the room to raise their hand if they have not been negatively affected by COVID, and no one raised their hand.
That's right.
Go further into that, please.
Well, financial impact isn't just rooted in salary. Financial impact can be in your other businesses that you have a startup, and one of her business was a travel business. Your ability to generate income, your ability to spend money and to make life better for your family. All of these narratives we're going to be exploring as part of her defense, but it's too complicated. COVID's impact is too complicated to simply say she gets a salary and her salary was never cut, and as a result, she wasn't affected by COVID. That just makes zero sense. So we're going to pursue those avenues.
So you know, when I look at Marilyn Mosby, I look at her as this dynamic young attorney. There are a lot of people who are excited around Marilyn, and I know that she was requested to speak all across the country. Was her ability to speak and to receive potential money for her speaking engagements affected by COVID?
That's certainly another narrative for sure. And historically, that's what she's done as another. I'm not sure whether it was a stream of income or not, but all of that needs to be explored because it's just not that cut and dry.
Right. Mm-hmm. Is there anything in particular that you want the audience to know before we sign off?
I want everyone on the phone on this digital platform to, as I said, lift Marilyn Mosby and her family up in prayers, to call your representatives in Maryland and elsewhere. Ask them to ask for an inquiry into this prosecution, this indictment of Marilyn Mosby. Ask your state elected officials, ask your federal elected officials, your 2 senators, your congressmen, that you're concerned about the treatment of Marilyn Mosby, and ask them to do an inquiry and ask them for a report on this investigation, how it started. Call the U.S. Attorney's Office and register your objection, because if they can do this to Marilyn Mosby, they can certainly do it to any of us.
Well, thank you, Scott. We'll continue to support you. We understand that Marilyn Mosby must be supported in this moment. And one of the ways, of course, we can support her is by registering to vote. All right, we registering to vote. There's an election coming up in the upcoming 5 months, and we need to show our disdain for this process through our ability to pull the ballot. Secondary, of course, we need to donate. None of these things happen by virtue of osmosis. In order for her to be successful in the courts, it requires it requires us to make a monetary sacrifice. So those of you who are in power, please be willing to make a monetary sacrifice to the www.mosbydefensefund.com. We're going to put that on the screen so that you can have that information to donate. I saw a good friend of mine, fellow freedom fighter in Baltimore City, Nicole Hanson Mundell. Nicole, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
I like the haircut. I mean, I know this is probably
Thank
not the
you. I
time.
check out the earrings though.
I see the big earrings. You're working it. You're working it, baby. You're representing Baltimore well. You're talking to a lot of those who have been negatively impacted by the criminal justice system by virtue of your community activism. What is the spirit? What is the spirit in the street around this Marilyn Mosby attack?
I'm glad you asked that because, you know, the spirit on the ground is that people are very familiar with this type of unfair treatment, right? They are very familiar with being presumed to have done something that they did not do. And what I'm hearing from folks on the ground is that we support her. You know, we hope that she has strong lawyers to help her fight this. What I'm hearing on the ground, especially for those that are formerly incarcerated, those individuals who have done their time behind the walls and have come home to change their lives, women like me, men who have done some extensive time behind the walls, many of them shake their head in utter disgust that we have a system where folks can just wage an all-out attack just because they don't like some of the things that she done. So when you go in communities, when you go in places like Emerson Avenue and Monroe Street, you hear they're just mad with her because she's not incarcerating people who smoke marijuana, for instance, or they're just mad with her because she has called out the governor for continuing to, shed this negative light on Baltimore. They're just mad with her because she calls out the governor for, asking him to decrease the prison population. And so it's people see, right? It's just want to make sure that the public don't get caught up in the propaganda and media, what the media decides to put out there, that people just read, right? And if you can't, ask somebody else to, just don't allow local media to determine how you feel about a person. Don't pass judgment, right? Because we've all been in that place where we've been accused of something that we didn't do, right? And so when we want, we don't want people to make any assumptions. We want people to allow us the presumption of innocence. And that's what we say she deserves, right? And anybody who's been through those courts, the one thing they say is that she deserves due process. She deserves the presumption of innocence. So to wrap up, what your question was, like, the folks on the ground are standing with this woman. It showed through the fact that she's still our state's attorney, right? People decided that they wanted her to represent them as Baltimore's top attorney. And we're just eager for her to be vindicated. A lot of people say, you hear a lot of people saying, I just can't wait until she's able to beat those folks. So they'll say things like, we just hope she fights, because in our world, when the feds bring down charges, it's this presumption that they have it all, right? And I just want people to know that's not true, right? That the feds are beatable, right? I have supported many formerly incarcerated men that have fought feds, right? And have come out vindicated, So, I just want people to not assume that just because the feds are involved, that this is a wrap, right? To know that, there are folks out here who fight federal investigations, who fight federal indictments and come out on the right side.
So facing 30 years for taking your own money out, what's your first thought? And I want to be clear, taking your own money. 30 years. What do you think about that? How does that, as an American, how does that make you feel?
That makes me feel, I don't know what to feel. Like, I don't know what to feel of how I can work hard for mine, right? And that because I decide to take it, that there are people that can find ways to twist up the law, so much so that I am somehow in the wrong for taking my own money. I don't really have an emotion for that right now, Derek. I think most people would, feel like it's not fair. It's not fair that I can't tap into monies that I work my butt off for, right?
So Nicole, let me ask you a question. COVID-19, all right? Give us your emotion when you found out that we were in the midst of a pandemic. Give us the emotional roller coaster or lack thereof that you were on with facing the uncertainty of COVID-19 in March of 2020.
Wow. We were in my professional life, it was a feeling of uncertainty because in my professional life, there are people who depend on me, right? There are people who physically visit my office who do not have access to electronics, cell phones, Zoom, and the like, right? And so my anxiety was through the roof because, I had to make a decision that I had to figure out how I was going to physically be there for people who are most vulnerable, right, in community. And then I had my immediate thought was, what about the people behind the walls, right? How are we going to ensure that they are safe, right? How are we going to ensure that, we thought about things like how can we get fruits and vegetables behind the walls? Because we know that healthy eating can combat many of these things, right? So, I just, my head was like a roller coaster of heightened anxiety for people who normally I could go visit and normally I could can be in the physical and support and walk through some things. But then in my family life, my anxiety was also through the roof, right? Like, my husband had to figure out, was he going to go back to work? And if he didn't, how was we going to replace that income? My children not able to go to school. And so now I have to become I have to not only just work with them in terms of studying after school, but now I have to be the teacher, right? And it was a lot, it was
a very uncertain time. I mean,
very
do you know anyone who pretty much had a handle on COVID?
We still don't have a handle on COVID. All of us have been impacted by COVID in one way or another, in a negative way. Whether it's mental, like your mental health, you have family members who passed away, family members who were impacted by it, friends who found themselves in the hospital for weeks on end. I had a friend who I had to watch her two dogs while she was in the hospital, right? Anybody that knows me know I'm not a dog person, right? I'm just not that girl, but I had to figure out how to bring two dogs in my household for a friend. It was just a very, in the beginning, it was a very uncertain time, mentally, financially, for all of us. And anybody that says that they wasn't, then, they may have, I don't know anybody who wasn't impacted by COVID.
Yeah, just reading the case, I felt that, when you say somebody is impacted, all right, it seems to be extremely subjective, all right? And in the case of COVID, it's almost not subjective because it literally changed everything.
Right.
I think that, and these will be, kind of my parting words, and I'll give you an opportunity to have a concluding statement. I think that we have to watch and we have to be very responsive to the America that is trying to be repealed. All right. We've had so many progressive movements from the 1960s up until now. And I think that there are a lot of people who truly would rather have things the way they were. What would be your advice to Americans, and in particular, Black Americans throughout the country, in terms of what should they do to be on guard as we see these things being repealed?
Repeat that question. Repeat that question.
The question is simply, I'm arguing that there are certain equalities, there are certain things, including progressive prosecutors who've emerged that are under attack.
Right.
How do you think Americans should respond to this attack? What do you think? You are an activist. I know that. How do you think Americans should respond to this attack, if you perceive it as an attack?
Yeah, it's definitely an attack. It's an attack. For me, it's an attack on Black women. It's an attack on any Black woman who decides to hold some elected office and be progressive, or any Black woman who decides that she wants to look at the way this system was designed and figure out how to make it a more equal place, right? It's an attack on all of us, right? Because be clear, if they are able to attack Marilyn Mosby, then none of us are safe, right? As an advocate, one of the first things I thought was like, where are the change.org petitions, right? Where are, how can we encourage our federal elected leaders to petition the Biden administration to stop this federal investigation? I thought back, I was like, dang, if Elijah was here, he'd be right up there with us, right? And it often, it's like, where's Kwaisi on this? Like, where are our federal Black elected officials on this? Why are they not? Why don't we see them? One of the things I heard that former delegate Eric Byrne could have done something, right? And in the legislature, he was one of the most progressive elected officials that walked those halls of Annapolis, right? And so now he's in a new position. I'm urging folks to reach out to Eric Byrne's office and encourage him to do the right thing and look at this investigation. I know the attorneys kind of asked him to do some things, and I think that's fair.
But Nicole, we have come to the end of the broadcast. I want to thank you. I want to thank all who were responsible for organizing this fight for justice. And to those who are listening throughout America, the battle for our survival as a community is at our doorstep. So we have a responsibility to respond. Fear is a response, all right? Fear is a response. To hide is a response. To see, to observe, and to do nothing is a response, all right? But what we're encouraging all who are listening now is to respond in a progressive way, all right? Don't let fear be the barrier that stop you from grabbing holds of the reins of our time. Again, you can make a donation. Make a donation. It's coming to me. www.mosbydefensefund.com. www.mosbydefensefund.com. And if we can put that in the chat, we would appreciate it. Register to vote. The truth of the matter is that Maryland is still running for reelection. Vote. This is our power. Like and share this feed. Like and share this feed. And last but not least, there is a petition that will be posted at the end of this event, and you want to be a part of that you want to participate with that petition. But I thank you. Again, I stand with Marilyn. I support her. I support all of the leaders who've emerged, past and present, who are challenging America to be better, who are challenging the criminal justice system, the economic development system. We're not done with the rounding of America. This is not a Marilyn Mosby fight. This is not a black fight. This is an American fight. And I'm asking all Americans to get involved in some form or fashion as those things, as the method and means for participating has been shared with you today on this broadcast. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Bye-bye.
Major policy decision from Baltimore City State's attorney. Marilyn Mosby says her office will no longer prosecute cases of marijuana possession.
One thing that's going under the radar is Marilyn Mosby. Marilyn Mosby tried to get 5,000 marijuana convictions over her judge.
Yeah, Marilyn Mosby has been doing the work of the Lord. And I
Yes.
think that people don't understand how hard that is, especially when you have the fraternal order of the police against you. That's really tough. Marilyn Mosby is truly a modern day David against the Goliath-like system.
506, Baltimore State's attorney Marilyn Mosby is calling for reform in investigating and prosecuting police misconduct.
She announced a 5-point reform plan during a news conference at Coppin State University. That plan includes adding police powers to her office and the ability to reject the right for any Marylander to choose a bench trial.
I'm proposing to take that right away. What I'm proposing to do is to conform laws with the federal standards and understanding and recognizing state has a right to a jury as well as the defendant.
And Baltimore City's top prosecutor announced a new program to introduce kids not to the criminal justice system, but to the profession.
As we are all too well aware, all too often our young people are first introduced to the criminal justice system under negative circumstances when they've unfortunately become a part of the system.
Alfred, Vincent Watkins, and Andrew Stewart walked free after spending 36 years behind bars for a crime they didn't commit.
On behalf of this system, in an attempt to right wrongs of the past, I apologize to you and your family.
When it comes to conviction integrity, you know, ensuring that we're only as prosecutors advocating for those that we believe are guilty, but ensuring that we're also advocating to exonerate those that are wrongly accused and convicted.
One person finally had the courage to stand up and support us against police misconduct. Marilyn Mosby, we with you.
You also have to think about what we've been through as a city, right? From the untimely death of Freddie Gray, to the uprising, to the Department of Justice coming in, exposing discriminatory policing. This is the 8th largest police department in the country, to one of the largest police corruption scandals in the history of the country, to having 5 police commissioners in 3 years, to also having 3 mayoral administrations, right? We've been through a lot.
racism. We will not stand for discrimination, and we will not stand for intimidation.
They want enforcement of lower level drug crime, though a lot of Silicon Valley boys are selling weed now.
So one of the things that I recognize as a prosecutor, my ability to shape the criminal justice system, recognizing, as I stated, that these low level offenses for Black people in this country can lead to a death sentence.
You have to consider the fact that you have a young white boy openly carrying and illegally possessing an AR-15 loaded with 30 rounds to a Black Lives Protest Matter in order to defend business. It's not his life, not his liberty, but defending someone else's property for rights, or a code name for criminals, where he subsequently shoots and kills 2 unarmed people, wounds another, and yet he approaches the police, his arms up, AR-15 strapped to his body, and the police, they drive past him. Why? Because he's in no way, form, or fashion is this young white boy carrying the AR-15 people was perceived as a threat.
That judge would have never allowed you to say half of that, Mosby. I'll tell you that right now.
What I've learned since I've been state's attorney, and it was something that I had to develop very quickly, was to develop thick skin, right? What I completely understand is that you cannot internalize the criticism and the critique and the implicit bias and the misogynistic sort of undertones of the media or whoever else. You cannot, because I cannot allow that to distract me. When I consider the fact that 95% of the prosecutors in this country are white, 79% are white men, and as a woman of color, I represent 1% of all elected prosecutors in the country, then you learn how not to take it personally or to internalize it, and to understand that those attacks are rather upon what you represent.